Web apps these days tend to not implement everything that they appear to do. There's a wealth of external services out there, such as Amazon's S3, SendGrid, and others. Our apps can take advantage of these services, and to do so usually requires some sort of authentication credentials. Especially if we're building an open source project, it could be disastrous if we accidentally put those credentials into source control. Imagine if the whole world were able to spin up Amazon servers using your credentials and, consequently, your credit card. We don't want that. In this episode, we're going to look at a nice way to make development easy while at the same time protecting our sensitive credentials. Now, caring about the environment isn't just for people who like clean air. It also helps us have clean apps. There's the concept of the 12-factor app, and the third factor in the list states that configuration should be stored in the environment. There is more benefit to this than just security. We're going to use SendGrid to send our emails, and I think it's great to have different accounts for staging and production. We don't want test pollution in our production environment. One option I've seen in days past is to put all the credentials in a file that simply doesn't get put into source control. Whenever you scale up an additional server, you have to remember to manually copy that file into place. That's suboptimal in my opinion. You've probably noticed that we're already using the environment for some of our configuration. For example, the port that we run on comes from the environment, which we can see in config application.js. Why not just do more of that? Well, we will, but let's say we had a top secret token that we had to expose at runtime. We'd have to remember to run top secret token equals, npm start every time we run. Surely we can do better. Also, we want to clearly communicate to new developers on our project, that means you 6 months from now, what environment variables we need to get started. There's a package for that, and it's called .env or .env. This is an extremely simple package, and here's how it works. First, install it, npm install --save.env. To use .env, the documentation tells us to load .env as soon as possible. We'll do that at the very top of config application.js, so just require .env.load. Now remember that top secret token from earlier? Well, open a file called .env in your project's root and add the following line to it. Top secret token equals, Now let's drop to the console, and then we can output the value here. Presto, we got the token from our environment. But you loaded that from a file, you're likely saying. Very true, so let's make sure we don't hand away the keys to the kingdom. We need to get that file into git ignore, so echo.env, couple of angle brackets into git ignore. But we still want to communicate to new developers what they need, so let's do this. cp.env to .env.example. Now we open .env.example and replace the actual token with directions on how to obtain it. That file we can and should put into source control because it contains no sensitive information. To demonstrate this working, I'm going to put some actual SendGrid credentials into my local .env file, and for obvious reasons I'm not going to show myself doing that. We'll also need the NodeMailer SendGrid transport module so that we can use SendGrid with NodeMailer. So let's install it, npm install --save NodeMailer SendGrid transport. Next, I'm going to crud up config application.js a little bit. As a quick note on that file, during the break in production, I realized that I really don't like the way I set up the application. It was too heavily influenced by Rails and it just doesn't work like I want it to. A better construction is in the pipeline, and I think you're starting to see some of how it works with config options being passed into submodules. Anyway, we're going to lay this configuration down, knowing that with this better construction coming, it'll look different. Baby steps. So open config application.js and let's put in the following code just below our definition of global.app. So we're going to make mailer options. We'll branch on whether or not we're in production. If we are, we include our credentials that we pulled from the environment. If not, we put in config like we had before. And then of course, we're going to make our mailer by giving it our mailer options. Since we pulled the actual configuration into config application.js, we'll need to edit libmailer-index.js to take advantage of that. Transport map maps live versus local to a particular transport. Using that transport and the options we received from our configuration, we simply create our mailer. This refactoring removed this file's knowledge of the system it's running in, reducing its number of reasons to change and making it easier to understand. Okay, so I'm going to change that check for production to be the opposite so that I can test the mailer real quick. So now I'm just reversing this to say, if we're not in production, then we want to use the actual mailer. If we drop down to the console now, we could actually send an email. And this object is the same one that we used when we just generated the .eml file. One interesting thing is that the sendMail function on our mailer, it takes a callback that looks like this, takes an error and a result object. So if you're getting an error, you can supply that callback in the console to get access to the error object and see what's amiss. And in this test, we again see how useful the console is. And there you have it. We've actually sent an email from Node/. You don't have to use SendGrid to do that. If you have your own SendMail server, you can use NodeMailer to hit that. There are other transports to use too. Have fun with it. Till next time, happy coding.